I'm not going to tell you that Quicken sucks, even though that's the truth.
Okay, I will.
There goes the sponsorship.
We just blew another one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Estate at Halftime Show. I'm James Harper, and we are about to get live. This is an interesting show this week where we're not necessarily going to have a real estate agent on the show. It's going to be a fellow lender that works for the same company as me. His name is Michael Church. So stand by for the Real Estate Halftime Show coming your way in 2 and 2.
It's time for the Real Estate Halftime Show. Sit back, relax, and listen to Nashville's premier inside scoop to real estate with the Mortgage Extraordinaire himself, James Harper.
All right, we're back here on the Real Estate Halftime Show, and I am in the secret headquarters at the Emerald Room here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Very special guest, Michael Church today. And Michael Church has a very successful mortgage branch with Fairway Independent Mortgage down in Franklin, Tennessee. And of course, I have my local branch up here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So today we're going to do something a little different, have a little fun, and we're going to talk about some different topics. But first of all, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit about your background and how you... I always think it's interesting how people get in the mortgage business. It's not like we go to school and say, hey, we're just going to be in the business. How did you fall into the business?
Well, I think most people get into the business and then they get stuck in the business, and then you're stuck doing mortgages for the rest of your life.
Why is that? Why do we get stuck in it?
I don't know. I think people get into it and think it's going to be easy, and then you start making a little bit of money, and then you realize you can't really go anywhere else and make that kind of money,
right.
And you're stuck.
Well, I call it the golden handcuff theory.
Yep.
I came from the engineering field, and when I jumped into the mortgage business, I thought, well, how long has this been going on? Because we do work hard, and it's not like the money is just given to us. But if you work really hard, you do get rewards for the number of hours you put in. I think sometimes not. But you do get rewarded for the effort that you put in, and really the sky's the limit, and no different than being a realtor. And I think that's how we kind of fall into this industry and, like you said, stay in it. So what year did you get in the business?
So 2000.
2000. That's about 8 years before me.
So I built my first house when I was like 20 years old, and
Nice.
I had a full-time job and had to get my mortgage.
So what was your past life?
So I worked in manufacturing.
Okay.
So I was a production supervisor for Kellogg Snack Foods.
I was in manufacturing too.
And so we made the Rice Krispie treats for the whole entire world. So you've not lived until you've had marshmallow up in your armpit.
And you smell like
Yeah.
Rice Krispie treats when you go home.
Yeah, it stinks.
When you work for Starbucks, I mean, you really smell like a coffee bean when you come home. My ex-wife used to be work for Starbucks, and oh my goodness, she'd have to get home and just go right to the shower. It was awful.
I wonder what you smell like when you leave the strip club.
Flowers? I don't know.
It depends on the season. Then.
So you jumped into manufacturing.
Yep.
Or actually, you jumped out of manufacturing, jumped into the mortgage business. And what was the key thing or key moment or aha moment that said, I want to do this? Did somebody, like mine was at a Halloween party. I was dressed up like some DJ. This woman comes up to me, she says, hey, you'd be great in the mortgage business. And I said, you're crazy. That's how I got started. What about you?
So I built my first house, had a hard time getting my mortgage, and I was working with a mortgage broker in Georgia where I lived. And being that I was 20 years old, I didn't have a lot of credit or a lot of employment history, none of that stuff that you need to actually get a mortgage. So it was kind of a bit of a challenge to get my mortgage to go through the system. So it took like 4 months, I think, to finally be able to get it done and pay off the construction loan and all that stuff. So during that process, just talking with that mortgage broker lady that I had doing my mortgage, she was like, you'd be really good at this. Like, why don't you come down here? Because I work third shift. So she was like, why don't you come down here during the day and I'll show you how to do mortgages and you can do this part-time. So I would work my 8-hour shift, get off in the morning, sleep for a few hours, get up, go to her office, and then she would take me around to lunches with realtors. She'd take me around and show me how to get business, how to call on builders, like how to do a loan. And I did that part-time up until I moved to Nashville in 2003. So I think a lot of times for me, I had a cushy salary and I was a little too scared to go straight commission.
Yeah, me
But
too.
sometimes I think God has a way of kicking you in the butt and making you do it on his time, not your time. So when I got to Nashville, I took a job at Standard Candy Company making Goo Goo clusters. I was a production manager there.
Krispies to Goo Goo clusters.
Right. So I was there for a year. It was the worst job I ever had
Because
in
you
my
know
whole life.
you have some manufacturing experience in sweets.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like sweet stuff.
Yep. All right.
Obviously. But anyway, so I worked there for a year and they were like, I mean, it was like 70, 80 hours a week for like not a lot of pay. And they were like, obviously you're not happy here. So you should probably go just find something else to do. So they gave me a severance package and sent me on my way. And so I sat on the couch in my underwear playing Xbox for 2 weeks, feeling sorry for myself. And I thought, this money's going to run out. Like, am I going to get another food job and move out of state? Or am I going to do the only other thing I knew how to do, which was mortgages? So I literally started looking for jobs. I found a job over in Maryland Farms at a mortgage company that was doing lending tree leads and doubled my income the first month. So been doing mortgages full time ever since.
Wow, very very similar pattern to me. I was given a severance package to leave an engineering job, and as soon as they said, "Hey, we're going to have to part ways with you. You've done everything we've asked you to do, but here's a small severance package." I said, "Well, where's the front door again? I'm out. I'm gone." And I was out of that city that night because I was kind of living out of a suitcase for that job for a couple of years, and that's when I came back for the Halloween party, and I think God has a way of just shutting doors on purpose, because if it's not completely shut, you don't know what else is out there. And that's true with like relationships too. I mean, holy cow, sometimes you just have to have those doors shut. So you got into it, and what did you feel like when you jumped into the mortgage business? And you said that was in 2000?
Well, I got in 2000. I didn't really get in it full time until 2004.
All right, 2004. I jumped in 2008. So when you jumped into it, what'd you really like about it?
I like the chase. Like, I like chasing clients and I love helping people. So for me, being able to help people and see their reaction when you can actually help them buy a home when they think they can't, like,
Yeah,
that's kind of like a drug for me.
Yeah. And so has that changed today?
No.
Still the same.
Yep.
What do you think has changed about the business since 2004 to today?
A lot.
Obviously, we had Frank Dodd in 2010 that kind of revolutionized how we get compensated, which I think was good. Added some integrity to the business. Got rid of the originators that are felons and can't spell credit and things like that. But what do you think's really evolved out of the business or has changed?
Well, I think we're definitely doing a lot cleaner loans than we did back in the day. Like when I first started doing this full time and was doing brokered loans, we literally could close a loan. I could state their income, state their assets. Basically, if they had a pulse and we could fog a mirror, like that, we could close a loan in like 3 days.
Yeah, one of my originators that used to work for me before I got in the business said he used to go to the bar and they'd be closing loans at the bar with the underwriter.
It was like the Wild West.
Wild West.
Well, I mean, that only lasted for a few years, and then it
imploded.
down. Yeah.
It imploded.
It come crashing down.
So let's parlay that, Ed, or segue that into what's kind of going on in the market right now with the NAR lawsuit that's kind of been the scuttlebutt the last couple of weeks on the news, and real estate agents really being frantic about how this is going to affect them. When we went through a pretty drastic change in 2010, what's your takeaway from everything that you're hearing on the street and how agents are responding to it?
I personally think everybody's freaking out over nothing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the cream always rises to the top, and I think this will be a thinning of the herd, which is kind of necessary. If you're not a true professional and you don't know how to sell your value and articulate that to a client, you're not going to have any business, which is then going to force those folks out of the business. The true professionals that have been doing this a long time and know how to sell their value,
Not going to skip a beat.
they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, if I'm selling a house and you're my listing agent, and I tell you I'm not paying a commission, Well, when that buyer's agent calls and says, is your seller offering a commission? If you're the buyer's agent and they say no, what are you going to do?
Take them somewhere else.
Exactly. So it's just going to take a few months of some of those houses sitting on the market and the listing agent going back to the seller and saying, the reason your house is not selling is because you're not offering a commission. They're going to go back. It's going to be
and I think
the same.
it adds some legitimacy to the buyer's agent who now, like you said, has to sell their explanation of services on why they need to, sign this buyer's representation. And it helps give them some security, really.
Yeah.
On getting paid, because how many times have we both heard when they don't have that buyer's representation and all of a sudden they've lost that client to somebody else or FSBO or something like that?
They've showed them 20 houses and they call and say, oh, I just found out my cousin's a realtor. He just got his license, so I'm going to give the deal to him.
Oh, the infamous cousin and brother and sister and every family member. We've heard it all that we've lost a deal over. And the thing that cracks me up is, why didn't you just go with them to begin with? Why are you wasting my time when you already have somebody that you know in the business, some relative or long distant third, fourth, fifth cousin?
Well, it happens to us too. I mean, we get clients and get a good rapport with them, get them pre-approved, and then they call back and say, well, my dad suggested that I go with our local bank.
Yes. Daddy comes into the equation.
Love that.
Oh,
Said
man.
no one ever.
Dad comes out of nowhere and has to just blow it up.
And he hasn't bought a house in like 30 years. So
yeah, and he doesn't remember. Daddy doesn't remember how the mortgage transactions are then, let alone what they are today.
Exactly.
So if you're a listener today and you're trying to figure out who you want to partner with, as a lender, if you're a real estate agent, or if you're a buyer just trying to find a lender, I mean, obviously we have to be creative in this business, and that doesn't mean we break the law or we commit fraud or anything like that. But there still are a lot of lenders that don't really know what they're doing. Loan officers don't really know what they're doing, and we see it each and every day. How do you kind of separate yourself when you're trying to do your value proposition or your explanation of service to your borrower to explain how you kind of think out of the box, or you're in that gray area, not so black and white?
Well, I think to answer the first part of that question, I think if you're a client and you're looking for a mortgage professional, you need to do your homework. There's websites you can go on, like the NMLS, to see how long that person's been employed or in business. I think a lot of times these online lenders hire loan officers, put them through extensive sales training and turn them loose, and they don't really know how to do a mortgage. They just know how to sell you on the phone. So I think they get into the process, and then that gets passed off to somebody else, and then before you know it, you don't know who you're dealing with on the other line.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is do your homework, check that person's employment history out, make sure they have good reviews, see how much
Google
volume
reviews.
they've done. Yeah,
Google
ask
reviews
questions,
are a big one.
because all loan officers are not created equal.
Yeah, so good. And is there one specific transaction that you can remember where you kind of had to think out of the box and be creative? I mean, we have hundreds of them, but once some time passes, because of at least my age, I can't remember what I did yesterday sometimes. But from a creativity standpoint, I feel like that's one of my strongest suits, where I always try to figure out a way. That's the problem solver in me. How do you feel about that? And maybe what's an example of one that you got a little creative on that maybe someone else didn't think about?
Well, I think it happens all the time when people will call us and they're like, well, the lender they can't get the loan to go through. And it's 9 times out of 10 because the loan officer wasn't experienced enough to not know what to put in the file.
Or what to keep out of the file.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's our job as an originator to paint the prettiest picture we can for the underwriter, who actually ultimately makes the final decision. So it's just a matter of navigating the guidelines to make sure you provide just enough that you need to, but not send extra stuff that maybe they don't need to see, because once they've seen it, I mean, how many times have
That's very
this
important.
happened to you?
Yes. Very key there. Once the underwriter sees, they can't unsee it.
Correct.
So it is all about presentation. And I kind of use the analogy of when you go to a nice restaurant, I mean, it's all about the presentation of that meal. And if we don't present that borrower in the right light,
Yep.
that may not taste very good to the underwriter. And so it's all about the presentation. And if we present it right, even though it may not taste very good, if that's presented right, that's got to be good.
I've been doing this 25 years. I've closed thousands of loans. I've literally probably seen most all scenarios that could come up. So I know how to navigate those things better than somebody that's not been doing the job very long.
So what do you think the last year, how's that? I mean, obviously you're still killing it out there and, doing a great job with not only your relationships, but the number of transactions you're doing a fantastic job. So what has changed, or what have you been consistent with over the last year or two? Because, man, it's been tough for everybody in the business. A lot of people getting out of business, cream of the crop rising to the top, like you said. So what do you feel like you've been the most consistent with that's helped push you through?
So I feel like just keeping my eye on the ball and getting back to the basics. The stuff that used to work still works. And I think we got so busy during the boom the last few years that we kind of stopped doing all the stuff that we used to do to get business and just started focusing on everything that was coming at us like gangbusters, because it was like shooting fish in a barrel. So I just got back to doing the basics. Picking up new relationships, going to lunches every day of the week almost with realtors, calling on listing agents that we've done a good job for. There's a lot of people falling out of the business, so I think there's a lot of people looking for new relationships. The other thing that's really helped me in the last year is my social media, like doing the videos and stuff. People see me on social media, and then the agents will reach out and say, hey, I really like what you're about. Like, can we have lunch? And then they'll start sending me business. So just keeping my foot on the gas.
Yeah,
just keeping my foot on the gas, because the market, I feel like you're gaining traction, but it doesn't feel like you're gaining traction because the market's taking it back away from you at the same time you're gaining it. So you take one step forward and 3 steps back. So you just you got to outwork the market.
Yeah. And I think to summarize everything you just said, it's really just staying top of mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you just want to kind of stay present, stay top of mind. And you and I have talked about it before. I mean, people are going to work with who they want to work with.
Absolutely.
But you just got to be present enough to let people know what you're doing. And so they can make that conscious decision.
And I'm not for everybody. I know that. And the best feeling is like when I can realize that early on. I think as a new loan officer, I couldn't see that was not my client early enough. And so I would waste weeks and months of time on somebody, and they weren't ever going to use me to start with. So I think just having the experience and knowing, like, I don't think I'm for you, you're not for me, but that's okay. And just parting ways early before it causes you stress or anxiety or any of that kind of stuff.
I think, I think there's still sometimes it does, even as long as I've been in the business, but you get your feelings hurt, right? You take it personal. And I don't so much anymore. And I think, hitting it off at the pass is important, but there's still just so much fickleness. I think when the rates are where they are right now, I mean, everybody should shop. I'm not taking anything away from shopping. But I think the thing that is important for any listener out there is if you're working with a lender and you've already had them pull credit and send documents to you and give you some kind of a proposal, there's no reason to ghost them after that.
Well,
if you find another lender, or if some, your dad or your brother and sister has somebody that they know, use that and go back to that original lender to at least give them a chance. You've already invested time and energy into them, and they have you. Why not at least see if you can get the best deal either way? Well, I think a lot of times and for some reason it just doesn't happen sometimes.
I don't think they realize we don't make a dime until the loan closes. So I think it's easy for them to do it because they don't realize, one, how we get paid and how hard we have to work to actually get paid. The amount of people that are involved in a mortgage and a real estate transaction,
very good point.
The amount of hands that have to touch that, it is nothing short of a miracle of God every time a loan closes, because there's so many people involved in getting that loan from start to finish. So,
and it is like a manufacturing assembly line.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I kind of treat it, and I know you do too. And to make those stars line up every single time is sometimes, I mean, there is no perfect file. We know that. I mean, there's no perfect borrower. I mean, it's very, very rare. Some of the best borrowers always have some kind of hair around it or some kind of obstacle. It always pops up, seems like.
Everybody has skeletons in their closet for sure.
Yeah. That's a whole nother episode in itself.
For sure.
I always say when rates climb, it always takes the public at least 60 days for them to know that they're there.
Yeah.
And the fluctuations that we've had over the last year, really, I think the public still doesn't want to agree with it. So it's just forcing them to shop. But what about lenders in our business that are really just working for literally almost nothing to try to keep their doors open and kind of devaluing what we're doing to them and trying to make it more of a commodity?
Well, I think if you operate out of a scarcity mindset, then you're going to have people like that are bottom feeders that are always going to be in the industry, that are willing to work for less and undercut and stab you in the back. There's enough business to go around to not have to do that, and it's just unethical. I don't want that reputation. You know, I don't want to be the one that they say every time I call him, he's bad-mouthing the competition.
Right.
Now, am I going to tell you the truth if I know something? Yeah, but I'm not going to tell you that Quicken sucks, even though that's the truth.
Okay, I will.
There goes the sponsorship.
There goes the sponsorship. We just blew another one. We've blown a lot of sponsorships today. All right, so craziest stories. We like to finish with these. Craziest stories that you have been involved with or experienced through a transaction. I'll kind of lead off to kind of give you something to think about. We were literally at it was a husband and wife getting a divorce, and we were doing a refinance, and they absolutely hated each other. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever had because I actually went to this closing, which I typically wouldn't for a refinance, but for some reason I did. And they were sitting across from each other, and I thought it was War of the Roses. I mean, they started screaming and yelling it was so uncomfortable because they were screaming and yelling, and then it started getting personal. And all of this crap started coming out about why they got a divorce that had nothing to do with the transaction and why they were there to sign papers. And you could tell they were still obviously pissed at one another, and they just went at each other like there was no one else in the room. Jerry. It was a Jerry Springer moment. I thought, oh my God. And so I finally just had to say, listen, do we need to take a break? You know, do we need to go get some water? We need to walk around the building.
Let's take a breather.
Let's take a breather because this is getting intense. I mean, we were hearing all the dirt, me and this title company person. And that was probably one of the craziest ones I remember with them, you know, being head to head like that I thought they were literally going to fight, but just all the dirt that came out. I mean, my eyeballs had to be about this big. And so anyways, yeah. How about you?
So back in the day when we could actually call and talk to the appraisers about stuff, I had a refi going on, and I sent the appraiser out to this house, and she calls me and she's like, you got a second? I was like, yeah. She's like, I'm out here doing this inspection on this house. She said, can I FaceTime you? So she FaceTimes me, and apparently these people have a full-on sex dungeon in their garage with costumes, swings, lights, the whole 9 yards. She was like, what should I do? I was like, shut the door.
Am I supposed to take pictures?
Shut the door and don't take pictures of the garage. Then I had another one. I was at a closing one time, and the lady was sitting at the closing table, and she starts going through the settlement statement, and she's asking the attorney, like, well, what does this pay for? And what does this pay for? And she gets down this one line, and he's like, well, that one pays, to keep the lights on in the office. It pays for the pens. It pays for the stationery, blah, 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 blah. So as soon as he got done saying all that, she grabbed all the pens out of the thing on the table and stuffed them in her purse.
Since she's paying for them, she's going to take as many as she could. She's going to take as many as she could. Oh, that's good. Oh, wow. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do it again. We'll have to, whenever you're up this way, or we'll figure out another topic. It's always good to have conversations with you. And, man, all the best to you. Keep up the good work, and I appreciate you coming up here. Michael Church here on the Real Estate Halftime Show. Thanks for coming in. We're out of here.
All right.